What up, perps? Kid Copious back in effect. Purple State Party. You know what we're doing here? We're repping America, the center, and common sense. You know, as a child of the 80s, I guess, I remember a show called The Facts of Life. It was about a girls' boarding school. Yeah, it was just a sitcom, whatever. But their theme song has stuck with me my entire life, and I always remind myself of it. You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life. And that's what we try to look at here, the good, the bad, and the facts of life. So, I put this show together in less than an hour. I'm really proud of myself for it. I'm not relying on a lot of news articles, not relying on other people, coming up with this shit on my own, taking what I read in the news, trying to translate it, trying to see what it really all means. So, thanks for joining me. Let's get this thing rolling. All right, we'll get a few headlines out of the way here. Loretta Swit, she played Hot Lips Houlihan on MASH. That's a legend of a show. Recommend everybody watch MASH. There's a lot of good stuff in there, a lot of humor, a lot of dark truths. But Loretta Swit, she was on the Match Game, a show I loved. She squabbled with Miss Piggy a lot on the Muppets, and she will be missed. She was a hell of a soul. R.I.P. Loretta Swit. R.I.P. Elon Musk and the White House. Apparently he's leaving. Did a shit ton of drugs. Probably didn't help much. If nothing else, at least he raised some issues. He brought some stuff into the light. Out of the darkness, shined a light on that murky-durky swamp we got going in Washington, D.C. Wow, what a fucking cesspool that is. And in other news, apparently Epstein did kill himself. I trust Dan Bongino. Dan Bongino is running the FBI, or he's the director of something. I can't remember these titles all the time. But yeah, apparently there's no video evidence of anybody entering the cell. The video cameras were on. Hey, at least, even though Bongino at one point, like myself, believed that Epstein was murdered, we could admit, hey, look, there's no evidence of that. All the evidence points to he did kill himself, which makes sense because he knew he was never going to survive in prison. He knew he was never going to have the lavish lifestyle that he once enjoyed. And for a lot of people, they're not going to make it. So they just, end of life themselves. It's too bad, but he was a gross human being. I want to talk about another thing. The last show I did, Letter M, I started the show talking about how rushed I was because I had to get to the UEFA Champions League. And I'm proud to say my Arsenal won. I don't discriminate between men and women. Arsenal is Arsenal. I'm a gooner, man. And, what really made that game so exciting was the Arsenal were underdogs to Barcelona. And the girls they fought with all of their might on defense. And they held Barca out of the goal, kept them from scoring. And at the end of the day, the goal that Arsenal won on was scored by one of my favorite players, my favorite Arsenal player, Stinia Blackstenius. She's a Swedish player, but man, that girl's got so much grit, and the whole team, from the defense of Leah Williamson, Emily Fox, Team America right there, Elisa Rosso, Chloe Kelly. I mean, it's just amazing. We've come so far. We're in a really kind of confusing time of our history, especially here in America, but as a society as a whole. The world is connected now, and it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird, but when I started watching soccer, the only time I could see a soccer game was if I watched it on the Spanish channel. I don't habla español, so it was all a bunch of confusing to me. I only recognized names. But now, I get a full broadcast of Arsenal playing in the UEFA Champions League, the women playing in the Champions League on DAZN, DAZN. Look them up. They're on YouTube. They broadcast a lot of the women's games. It's amazing. I mean, they had interviews afterwards. I got to hear Stinia talk. I got to hear the coach. I'm going to butcher her name, Renee. But it's incredible how far we've come. Soccer women's soccer really shows the progression that we've made in this country. A lot of people like to make it out like we're never changing and we're just stuck in the old ways. And I'm here to tell you, as somebody from the old ways, we're not there anymore. We're not in that world anymore. It ain't cool to be racist. It isn't cool to be homophobic. It isn't cool to, rip on people for things they really can't change. I make a lot of jokes about people, but it's about what they could change. It's about the decisions they make. If somebody makes a choice, they deserve the ridicule, the praise and the ridicule. But anyhow, this week is N, and we're going to be focusing in on nonsense in the new society. So strap in. This one's going to get bumpy. So by now, most people know who Jake Tapper is. He's a CNN anchor. He recently published a book that kind of outlined how bad Joe Biden really was, health-wise at least. But anyhow, Jake Tapper went on a left-leaning podcast, and he was talking about his son. He's talking about how his son liked World War II and video games, and he was a linebacker playing football, and he aspired to become a cop so that he could help people. The two hosts started laughing, and one of them asked, well, how does he feel about the minorities? And Tapper retorted, this is why we fucking lose elections. And they do. It's this kind of nonsense that has turned the Democrats, the left, into kind of a laughingstock, kind of a joke upon themselves. They supported the Jew-hating college students led by entitled rich kids from Arab nations. They go out and they protest the legal arrest of illegal immigrants. They say nonsense like defund the police, which has just led to more and more crime. They use the changing climate as an excuse to just tax the shit out of everybody. Meanwhile, they say, oh, we're for the poor. It's a topsy-turvy world right now. I really don't understand how we got to this point. I mean, it's 2025 and weed is still illegal. Gluten has been demonized. I read an article the other day about a study about marijuana, whether you smoked it or used it as an edible. I kind of prefer edibles. I think it's healthier. But these people are saying, no, it's not healthy. It's really bad for you. But this study was 55 people. It was all self-reporting. It was to make an article that said weed is not good. That's what it was. It's not a study. 55 people who self-report is not a study. Meanwhile, alcohol ads flourish on the TV and the internet. I see them everywhere I go now. I mean, they mix the drinks now. I was just at a concert last night, oxymorons. What? But I saw everybody just drinking twisted teas and lemonades and things like that were fortified with alcohol, making it easier and easier to consume. But no, we got to still attack weed. And, the thing about weed is sure, it's probably not good for you long term. Very little in our world is good for us long term. The sun will kill you, for God's sakes. I mean, come on. But alcohol, the destruction starts on day one. You damage your liver and your entire internal functions almost immediately. DUIs cost people lives, jobs, opportunities, domestic violence in general. I mean, I myself have lost two friends directly tied to alcohol. One died at the age of 30, due to withdrawals, trying to kick the habit. Another one died at 45 due to a blown out liver. And along with alcohol, what else are we promoting the shit ton out of? Well, gambling. I mean, gambling, my daughter plays a lot of she's an online gamer. It's funny. She's getting older now, and, she's not as good as some of the youngsters. It's funny. But anyhow, she's telling me about how, you save up, you grind out for tickets or whatever, and then at the end of it all, you spin a wheel to see if you get the character that you want. That's gambling. We have blind box everything. I mean, even when we went to McDonald's last night after the show, they had the Squishmallows out there, right? And it wasn't just a Squishmallow in a plastic container. No, it was in a blind bag. I mean, though, I'm not saying blind bags are bad. I mean, it's interesting. I've collected baseball cards my whole life. You don't know what's inside those packs. But the way they're doing it now is just so insidious. So many kids' games and mobile games feature gambling, sort of like elements of gambling. right? I mean, it has gotten so bad that baseball has reinstated Pete Rose and the Black Sox. The Black Sox were the White Sox who threw the World Series back in the early 1900s. Pete Rose gambled on his own team when he was a manager. They were banned. Baseball used to have integrity, but gambling is the new way to separate you from your money. That's what it is. I mean, look at what they did with fantasy football or fantasy baseball. Okay? At one point, fantasy sports were for people like myself who really study statistics and probabilities and all of the intangible things that go into a sporting event to try to figure out what players were going to do good. But now they've just dumbed it down to, will Ohtani hit more or less than 1.5 home runs? Morons can do it. I mean, I'm not trying to slam people for wanting to play these games, but man, it's everywhere. I saw a guy at the concert last night playing slot machines on his phone, not even for real money. The worst part is they do the same thing with poker, and it teaches you to be a bad player. It really does. I mean, everything is being aimed at separating you from your money. You need to realize that. I mean, a lot of people know it, but, we'll get more into that. I want to talk about another artist. I mentioned oxymorons, so I might as well keep it going with obscure, slightly obscure or younger bands. This kid by the name of Grandson. Grandson, his music really helped my daughter through her darkest days. And, we've seen him a couple times, and, he's the king of the opening act. He's had some of the best opening acts ever. And I'm going off on a tangent, but Grandson is what introduced me to oxymorons. But anyhow, let's get back on track here, okay? Let's pretend that we're a train and we stay on the tracks. But Grandson just released a new single called Brain Rot, about the distraction of the internet, the way our attention span is weaponized and attacked by technology companies to prevent any real momentum, building on the pressing issues of our generation. In other words, they just keep you distracted from what you really should be paying attention to. He had a great line in Brain Rot. Watch it all through your smartphone with a battery mined by a child in a war zone. Yeah, that's the reality of some of the nonsense that comes out of the left. They want everything on these batteries that require nickel, cobalt, and lithium. And a lot of times it is mined in Africa with child labor while civil wars are going on. But people want to believe that they are saving the environment with a Tesla, a metal straw, and donations to BLM. The fact is we need to recognize what is going on with this technology, how bad this really is, and how through the power of social media, we are being misled constantly. Both sides do it, but overall, there is a concerted effort by these companies to separate us from our money. And one way they do that is by separating us from reality, by making us believe that there is this world out there that somehow we could step into if we just get enough posts for whacking our friend in the nuts with a baseball bat. Because we see a handful of people doing that. But worst of all, they know how to sell through the power of social media to convince us to overpay for stupid ass shit and to have stupid ass values because we see some pretty person on the internet saying, and we go, oh, we want to believe that. We want to buy that. You see how it works? And we're inviting all of that shit into our lives voluntarily through our cell phones. That's what it is. At one point, cell phones were one of the greatest advancements of humankind. The internet was supposed to bring about this new age for humankind. And I'm not saying it's all bad, because nothing is. There's a reason why, Purple State's colors are purple and gray, because nothing is black and white. Nothing is inherently good or bad. It's a mixture of both, and recognizing where the bad is, that's how you win the game. But the worst part, I think, is that people like myself, we try to say things. We try to bring up points. We try to go against the legacy media, the social media companies, the the instigators on Instagram, as it will be. And then, after everybody says, you're crazy, oh, you're evil, you're bad, then it turns out that we were right all along. Like, look at George Floyd. People are starting to say, well, wait a minute now. He wasn't really being knelt on by the neck. The police were doing what they had to do under the circumstances. Derek Chauvin might get released from prison soon because he might not have broken any rules, regulations, or laws. People were just caught up in the moment. But this guy was a criminal who was high on fentanyl at the time, who resisted arrest, who put police officers' lives on the line. Police officers, for the most part, get into that profession to help people. And we need to remember that. I don't know if Derek Chauvin was a good person. I don't know. Immaterial. I never thought what he did was bad. I thought it was an accident. I thought it was circumstances coagulating that caused this guy to die. But it certainly wasn't just Chauvin. But anyhow, moving on. You read about what's going on right now in California at this girls' track event. It was dominated by a biological male, right? And people are, like his mom said, oh, it doesn't give him an advantage. It gives him courage. Okay, whatever. But then I like to go to the comment section to see what people really think. Now, I got to filter a lot of it because, there is a lot of hate on the internet. But when you factor in, right, when you get rid of all of that, most of the people were like, be who you want to be, but on the field, you're still a male. Even the International Boxing Federation, which during the last Olympics allowed, somebody of some questionable biological whatever to compete and win a gold medal, they've even instituted a weight sex rule to protect competitors. I mean, in a sport like boxing, they have divisions. So you have somebody who weighs 125 is going to be in a lightweight division. Somebody who's 300 pounds cannot say that they identify as 125 and fight a 125 boxer. It's just common sense. And before people start with the nonstop rhetoric of we're trying to keep trans people from competing, no, just compete where you belong. Everywhere else, you could be whoever the hell you want to be, but common sense, safety, security, and allowing women to excel in sports, that needs to be the priority. Man, but don't use it. The worst part, my daughter brought this up. My daughter's a fucking genius, man. She finally started college, and she hates English. She hates English classes. It's boring to her. So right now, she's taking her English class and her accounting class because she loves math. So she's balancing the two. But anyhow, she said part of the problem with the trans athletes is that once you start allowing people to ban certain people, they will use that in evil ways. And that's true. But at the end of the day, I think there is a simple solution. If you have been participating in sports as a man all your life, you can't just switch and expect to get that advantage, because it is an advantage. But at the same time, it needs to be handled delicately and with love, because this isn't about hate. I don't hate the biological male who breaks women's records. I don't hate that person. I love the girls, and I wish they had the opportunity, because I know how much girls' sports help girls to develop into successful, confident women. Not like some of the women who were preyed on by Diddy, who didn't have that confidence to just walk away. This one's going to be short. I'm really staying on track right now. This is amazing. Hold on, I'm going to take a breather. So, earlier we made mention about separating you from your money. And it's this new form of capitalism. And one of the ways that they really, really get you, there's three ways that I see right now that are the worst. One is the amount of ads that we are shown through social media, the internet, our games, things like that. And most of the ads you can't skip. They incentivize watching the ads. I do that all the time because I'm a grinder. That's how I get most of my money in the game I play, watching ads. But, I used to record stuff on VCR. And I have 2 VCRs set up to record Survivor. And after about the first half hour was done, I would take the tape out of one VCR to watch the first half and record on the other VCR the second half. And I would skip all of those commercials. I was really good at figuring out ways around being advertised to because I don't like it. I don't like, in particular, I don't like the ads that remind me of alcohol, and I don't like the ads that make me feel like I'm less than. Because a lot of ads do make you feel that way. They make you feel less than. But now it's gotten to the ridiculous point that even when I'm streaming and I pause a show, a fucking ad comes on. They are advertising to us constantly. And the reason they're doing this is the third reason. Preying on FOMO, fear of missing out. That's what they do. They make you think that everything is so damn important. And then we do it to ourselves. I watched a video by Advertisers on YouTube talking about destroying casual hobbies. And it was all about all the people who just sleep overnight in front of a GameStop, buy up all the new Pokemon cards, and then sell them for, scalp them on the internet. Just like tickets are being scalped. And these Fufu, Lamu, or whatever stuffed animals that they've convinced everybody you need. Because what they do is they take one of the really cute stuffed animals, give it to a really hot influencer, either hot in terms of exposure or hot in terms of beauty. And then everybody has to have this fucking ridiculous thing that just sits around your house and collects dust. And they just prey on it. Everything's pre-ordered. They get the hype going. They use countdowns on things. I've seen countdowns on ads where they're like, 1 day left, and I saw the ad for an entire fucking month. And every time I saw the ad, it said 1 day only. They know how to do this. They have turned capitalism, which is a fine, what do you call it? A fine strategy, let's just say. And they've turned it into something that is just insidious and evil. But worst of all, one of the worst thing that they do is that they make you feel less than for not having that product or that lifestyle. And then they offer you ways of getting it on credit or installment plans so they can rack up the interest. The added charges everywhere you go. Last night, we were at the House of Blues in Anaheim. I got to say, it's a nice venue, but concerts there suck. The vibe sucks there. I'm just going to say it out loud. But while we were in line, they sold us a parking pass, or, sort of like a discount on the parking pass, of which they probably get some sort of cut. And then they're walking around saying, hey, if you want to skip this long-ass line, $25 a person and you can go to the VIP line. Everything is upsold. Everything is designed to make you feel less than. And the worst part is that these social media companies, these marketing companies, these advertisers, whatever, are all in bed with the same people who are shaping our views on social and political issues. Here's a great example of that, all right? In 2016, we had a choice between Donald Trump, who was known for The Apprentice, or Hillary Clinton, who was married to Bill Clinton. I went with Gary Johnson. He was a libertarian, okay? He was a third party. Maybe we get some different viewpoints during the debates or something if we can get some votes for this guy. I mean, he was the governor of New Mexico for 8 years. But no. We were convinced that we had to go with two divisive people with little to no experience, both of whom played to the extremes, and Trump won. Then I had to vote for Trump because Biden, well, as I was proven right, Biden was completely worthless. Then they try to throw up Kamala Harris, and it's like, holy crap, I got to vote for him again. But these parties are in league with these very same influencers out there to convince us that we only have these two choices. We can sit back and take the choices they give us, or we can make our own. Who's with me? I'm Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party. And so are you. Love one another. Keep on grinding. And every time you get the chance, let the music envelop you. And dance it out.